Hello, everyone. This is Bahanu Nasia from Wonderland, and I have Christina with me. She is my guest for the Tracts webinar from the Salzkammergut region in the middle of Austria. Christina, welcome to our session. Would you present yourself?
Thank you, Bahanu. Thanks a lot that I have the possibility to be here and to share our work with everyone. My name is Christina Jaritsch. I'm working for the European Capital of Culture Bad Ischl Salzkammergut 2024 Legacy. Our current label is called Aufbruch Salzkammergut, which means Shine On Salzkammergut. And we want to explore to be a model region for the new rural. And we want to explore regional development through arts and culture.
So the new rural is a relatively new term, and I wonder if you could explain us what's what's going on and what the matter is, objectives are, and yeah, if you like, you can also share your screen with us.
Yes. To begin with, the concept of the new rural was inspiring me a lot in my programmatic work in the past years, which I did for our ECOC in 2024. As I mentioned before, Bad Ischl Salzkammergut was the ECOG region in 2024, and it was the first alpine rural region holding this title in Europe. And I was in charge for the programmatic areas of gender diversity and climate change. So to say, climate change and social change. And in this, we explored or discussed a lot of questions about this feeling of the new rural, which means that living in a periphery and living in rural areas in Europe no longer should feel as encapsulated and maybe narrow, but we really wanted to show ways how we could open up our minds and open up our concepts of lives through arts and culture. And there were, for example, projects like Salzkammergut, which was a queer community building project of all the 23 municipalities holding this title, where we had a lot of people showing up for queer topics and LGBTIQ plus rights. And there was a community formed for the first time. And we also managed to have our first Pride Parade last year, Salzkammer Pride in Bad Ischl, which will have a second, possibility to take place this year. It will be on the 23rd of August, by the way. So if anybody wants to join, come to Bad Ischl on Saturday, 23rd August from 1 p.m. And now I will give you some insights with a presentation of the idea of the new rural, and which it has got to do with contemporary approach for regional development through arts and culture. Just let me share the screen and
Looking
give you
forward.
an idea.
It's a big region now with 23 municipalities
Yes,
in
definitely.
between the mountains.
Yeah, as
Okay.
you see here, our label, model regional for rural Europe, it's a little bit hard to say, but which is still very important for us is the logo, which represent the 23 municipalities holding this European Capital of Culture title, and being a signal for the regional approach, which is really important for us. And the new rural as a term can show what European Capital of Culture can shift in European regions. And what our aim is for Shine On Salzkammergut now is to continue the spark of European Capital of Culture, but Ischl Salzkammergut 2024, because it is a crucial point of European capitals of culture to set impulses to be sustainable movements in rural regions and not only a one-year-long festival. And I will not go in every detail of this agenda, but as I mentioned before, the first point will be very important. What can inspire this new concept of rurality in arts and artistic and cultural projects? And what can it be for legacy intentions of European capitals of culture, and especially legacy of ICOC Bad Ischl Salzkammergut 2024? Yeah, and the new rural, as I mentioned before several times, is really inspiring us as we explored as young people also how to influence our region to make it more livable for younger people as well. Not only younger people, of course, it's always a generational approach, but I'm talking out of a perspective of a young queer person wanting to live in a rural area, which is not that common in these days. A lot of friends and a lot of my community is based in cities and urban areas. And they're always super surprised what we were able to do in this last year and past years, and that we really could establish a contemporary, bold program with our ICOC. And now to the concept of the new rural. You see here the map of the new rural, which has been established on a conference on utopias in 2021 at the University in Lüneburg, Germany. And as you can see here on this map of the new rurality, it gives an idea of what the contemporary periphery could look like. And how we could integrate urbanism and rural developments as crucial factors for a livable future, not only, of course, for younger people, but as a generational approach. You see here different possibilities for people to engage in their rural context. For example, there is unfortunately, the terms are in German, but I will give you an idea of what this map is telling us. It is about growing together and about building community, and it shows as well that we need spaces for communities. For example, co-working spaces, repair cafes, and educational courses in arts and culture to come together. You see that mentioned in this church-like building in the middle. It's about sharing ideas, about sharing perspectives of life as well. A lot about education, which is really interesting for the Salzkammergut, especially because we are facing a brain drain of younger people, especially as they have to move away from the region to do their studies, for example. We don't have universities in our region. And sometimes it's difficult to find jobs in arts and culture and possibility to show your art and to connect to creative people. And in the past years, in this European Capital of Culture process, it was also a big possibility to connect all these creative peoples together, and for example to show spaces which we can use or play with in a creative way. Of course, we had festivals, but we had as well community building projects. So it is important to have this continuous community process, but as well these shining moments where you can show what you've done together in the past months or years and to present yourself, your ideas and your artworks, for example. When it comes to new rurality and periphery, agriculture is a topic as well, as you see here. It's a privilege, for example. I think it's a privilege to have the possibility to lead a contemporary life in the periphery and have this and be really close to nature. And it can be important for artists as well, for example, to be close to nature for inspiration. And which is a great thing is that you have the producers of your food basically in your neighborhood. And you can see this here as well in the map of the new rurality, that your food is produced next to, I don't know, for example, the space where you educate yourself or have your community meetings or do your art. So that is as well a new way of life or a new feeling of being a person in a region and a feeling of I can't you cannot really maybe explain it scientifically yet, but feeling this idea of new rurality gives you the idea of being in a periphery and, for example, living in a village, but still feel connected to Europe and feel connected internationally as well. So it gives you the possibility to have this really rural life in places which do not really feel like an urban space, but it still leaves you connected, for example, to other European capitals of culture internationally, which have similar approaches. And through this vibrancy in arts and culture, you still feel connected. You don't feel like you are in a rural region and you got nothing to do. And I think this is the worst case scenario for rural municipalities and villages or even smaller cities when their citizens have the feeling that they they just have their apartment or their house there and they just live in their house and they don't have really a place to go outside of this because when this feeling evolves, it closes down social spaces that you could use for community processes, for example, and it prevents you from making friends or building communities in your interest field, for example. So the concept of new rurality is a lot of being connected as well and having the feeling of being connected to each other internationally, to topics, to through education, for example, where you have the feeling that you can develop yourself and live a happy life in the periphery. Yeah, and there are some concepts still that is part of this idea of living a contemporary rural life, so that we should in Europe and internationally as well recognize and value the potential of rural regions, for example. Periphery is not only the smallest sibling of the city, but it has potentials on its own. And it's not the counterpart of urban developments. So I don't think that it is really good to urbanize the countryside, but the countryside has its own values and its own possibilities to give to people. And as I mentioned before, it should not only be a place for retreat and hideaway. We have this in Salzkammergut where there are a lot of people who have their second homes here and come here for retreat. but we should as well, especially in arts and culture, give them the possibility to engage in community projects with their municipality, for example, and not seeing them as guests, but seeing them as neighbors. And through recognizing and valuing the potential of rural regions, you can see the countryside not only as a hideaway or as a retreat place or where you hide yourself from the world, but you can see it as an innovation lab for profound topics of our future. You can connect yourself on an international basis in a rural area as well. And in rural areas, it is still a really new thing or newer thing to experiment and learn through arts and culture. In Salzkammergut, it's not perfectly true as before the Second World War, especially the Salzkammergut was a region where there were a lot of artists and writers getting their inspiration from the region, and they spent, for example, months or even a half year in the region to do their art. And there were a lot of Jewish artists and writers as well who have been killed or pursued back then by National Socialism and who vanished from the region, unfortunately. But there was a tradition of artists coming to the region to get inspired and to work in the region and with the region. So that is still a heritage that is really important for cultural projects to be done in the Salzkammergut. And I will just give you a short impression about the European Capital of Culture region of 2024, which was or is still the playground and our field of action for cultural development and artistic quality. We already mentioned the 23 municipalities who held this ECOC title for the first time in an alpine and rural area. And it's located in Upper Austria and Styria. And you can see here all the municipalities of the European Capital of Culture of 2024. But Ischl was the banner city, but Ischl was the city leading the application for European Capital of Culture. It's always a two-form application process where bidding teams hand in bid books where you show your artistic concept and program for the area. And it shows our artistic program showed that we want to make the periphery priority. But Ischl in the middle, kind of, together with these 22 alpine rural municipalities, were making big steps towards rural development through arts and culture. Even though we have had or still have really demanding cultural geography. And you see the relief here of the region, and some of you may know the Salzkammergut as a really beautiful region with mountains and lakes, which is perfectly picturesque for the eye. But when you do regional cultural development, it's sometimes difficult to connect the municipalities because, for example, some neighbor municipalities, it takes you up to 2.5 hours to go from one city to the other because it's separated by lakes and or mountains. And it creates this feeling of being not really close to each other, even though, as I already mentioned, they are sometimes neighbor cities. And we had to deal with that a lot in the past years. And we set impulses to connect this region better together. We were able to connect, for example, the 23 mayors of the region, which formed a mayor's board where they were discussing crucial topics of their political daily life, for example, and their decisions when it comes to cultural politics on their field. And it was not common to do this before our title year. No, it was, of course, it was common before the title year, but it was not common before the European Capital of Culture process. So the municipalities were mainly kind of separated and dealt with their problems alone. And through this ECOC process, bringing these municipalities together, we brought the politicians together as well. And for example, when it comes to creative networks, they really strengthened a lot. And there were a lot of people working in the creative sector, artists, cultural workers, curators, for example, or producers, technicians, etc. All these people who are really crucial for the cultural sector, who haven't been connected before, are connected now. And it was a really important impulse. And it showed us that working together can have a big impact of all, especially on rural regions. And yeah, sharing knowledge, sharing community is really important for creative sector. And I don't want to get too long here. I just wanted to Sorry, I just have technical problems. So I talked a lot about the general impulses we made with our European Capital of Culture, and I wanted to ask you, Bahanur, if you still have questions or if I should go into detail with some
Uh,
aspects.
I think you mentioned already that you are working in this context of 23 rural municipalities. I mean, maybe we can give also size. I think Bad Ischl has about 10,000 people. Is that correct?
But Ischl has about 14,000 inhabitants, and
Uh,
it was the biggest city
mhm.
of the ECOG region. And all the people living in these 23 municipalities are on average 110,000 people.
Mhm. I mean, as a region, it's big. There are a lot of barriers, physical barriers, in form of mountains and lakes, and for the viewer, Upper Austria has kind of like a rather lenience to conservative politics. And you mentioned already one issue is gender diversity. And you mentioned also that the 23 came together and you manage in such a context uh, um, queer parade. I wonder how, if this region was specifically always kind of like open and diverse, or was it one of the processes in the 2, 3 years of preparation of the cultural capital? So because it's kind of like very tangible to see what can happen if creative minds and diverse minds come together.
Mhm. In my opinion, like I grew up in this region. I grew up in Ebensee. And I moved away when I was 18 years old to do my studies in Vienna. And then I spent 7 years out of the region, not completely. I came back some time, of course, to hold contact with my family and friends. But basically, there was 7 years which I like didn't engage that much in getting to know or developing my region. It didn't feel like my region. But what I still knew was that there were a lot of initiatives in this region that made really interesting work and worked in cultural field that is considered as alternative, for example, or organizations that did feminist work, as the association Frauenforum Salzkammergut. It's a women's association which is declared, which does declared feministic work, which is not common, in my opinion, in rural areas or more conservative peripheries, for example. But I saw that there are these points of connection, but these points of connection weren't really connected to each other. That was always my feeling. And I knew that there were really interesting and creative people in this region, but they haven't been really visible. They were visible when you were really interested in it, and when you, for example, I don't know, did research about I don't know, atelier studios in the region, and artists and writers living in the region, but it was not that visible. And I think this European Capital of Culture process made a lot of things visible that have been already there. And ECOC process as well gave the initiatives or regional initiatives also the possibility to connect themselves internationally and to make an effort and to maybe bring new aspects to their creative work and make the next step. That's my opinion. And when it comes to this queer community building project, Salzkammergut, that is a project that brought together people who were queer or are queer, but haven't had the community to show themselves. And it's always a little bit more difficult in rural areas on the countryside to live your true and queer self. It's not that common. And it gives you a lot of confidence when you know you have a community beside you that stands together with you and who, for example, organizes a pride parade with you where you can show yourself, where you can show your true queer self, where you can dress in all the colors you want, where you can show yourself in the gender you want to be today. So this is a new aspect we could give the impulse to through our program. And as I said, these like the raw diamonds were already there, but the past years brought them to shine.
Thank you. And also after the being the capital, now you are in the aftermath and reorganizing yourself. Uh, it's I think it makes a big difference who is leading the after process. And I mean, you said already the agenda and the framework in a diverse version where you highlight the social injustice, maybe also accessibility of public space, attention to queer people. And now comes the process and you have to decide which agenda to continue, which is sustainable, what is your flagship and what is your priority. Um, what were the, because this all experiences trace our future somehow. What is your learning or what are you taking to the future?
That's a really good question, and that is exactly in the process that we are going through now. We evaluate, for example, which project holders, which artists, which initiatives are interested in follow ECOC legacy, for example, who are still motivated, who want to take this park of 2024 like shine on with that impulse we did in the past year. And I think it comes together organically when you give the initiatives the possibility to express their needs and their wants and desires for the next years. And what we did in the past months, for example, we were present in the whole region through Kulturstammtische, where we invited people to open discussion tables, where we had, for example, a drink together, and we were talking about their possibilities and their wants for their creative work for the next years. And now we are like out of these impulses, we're building an idea of a program now. It will be a program where you could find projects that set small impulses throughout the year. And our vision is to accumulate all these projects and artistic approaches in a Salzkammergut triennial, which should take place for the first time in the year of 2027. So this is our big goal for the future. And we, again, as in the ECOG process and as you see in this concept of new rurality, we are combining this approach of continuous community building and this shining moment creative people need work, for example, and like a credo, which is still really important for us, is to combine this rural approaches, for example, traditional crafts as well, or traditional literature, music, and all of the genres. It can be as well ceramics, it can be visual arts in general, but we really want to connect these regional approaches that are really well established in the Salzkammergut with international impulses.
Mhm.
And therefore, we make sure that we hold our international cooperations as well. We still get engaged in the network of the ECOG family, of European Capital of Culture family, which is a great network to share knowledge between European capitals of culture. We engage in the network of Culture Next, which connects as well different cities and villages and regions engaging in cultural development and creative approaches and for example, as well festivals. We still hold contact with EU Japan Fest, which will make it possible, for example, to have Japanese artists here as well to look beyond Europe as well. That is still really important for us. And when you do this artistic research, you see that there are a lot of parallels, especially crafts. We
Mhm.
have so many people doing amazing crafts in Salzkammergut and Scala, for example, Salzkammergut Craft Art Lab was a really important project for ECOG, which showed where you can combine the ways between crafts and arts. And this really transfers to Japanese approaches and artists, for example. They have great people doing crafts, which are basically art. And we had already artists doing works together from Salzkammergut and Japan. Yeah, and these are basically the ideas we are now having. We will look where it goes.
Mhm.
We are also having other. We have still two Creative Europe projects, for example, called one of them is Deconfining, which is about African and European connections and deconfining discussions. And the Big Green Project, which is all about sustainability in culture and eco-sustainability as well, and the cultural sector being a role model for ecological sustainability as well. And of course, we try to explore new paths as well,
Mhm.
like where the travel will go, and which it depends as well where we maybe can establish new projects which are in this idea of European Capital of Culture and in this idea of Shine On Salzkammergut. but which may have not been there in 2024.
Okay. My key takeaway is that you are having the difficulty of a regional and geographic expansion where you have r literally mountains between each other, but you try to create a proximity of minds, and not only for the 23 municipalities and the 100,000 plus inhabitants, but also internationally or globally. And I think this is a very good starting point, which of course feeds off the traces of the past, but also needs a strong vision, I think. And it's for sure also not easy to translate a European cultural capital constellation to something sustainable. Wish you best of the luck. Or do you have anything else which you would like to share as the last comments with us?
Mm. Maybe an inspiration I got from a colleague from the legacy of Leeuwarden 2018 in the Netherlands. Stuart Bootsma, he's the artistic director of their legacy organization called Arcadia now, and they are doing this approach of community work as well, and showing their works in a triennial periodical way as well. So they are really inspiring us with their way they went with their ECOG legacy. And he was telling me, because we of course have a lot of the same questions and things we're going through in this legacy process. And one thing he told me, which is still really important for us, is he gave me the advice to form an alliance of the willing. So find people, find municipalities, organizations, initiatives that really contribute to this idea and work together with them in the future, and everything will work out.
Yeah, facilitate the ones who want to do something instead of fighting against very, very big opposition.
Yeah.
I can't agree more. Thank you very much, Christina, for giving us the insights. We will share your contacts and more description with this webinar so others can get in touch with you. So if you have any rural projects dealing with arts, sustainability, and empowering your inhabitants, then feel free to get in touch with Christina. Thank you
Yes,
very much, Christina,
that's nice.
for being here.
Thank you.
See you in another webinar then. Bye bye.
See you. Thanks for listening.